Welcome to episode 192 of The Brainy Business, understanding the psychology of why people buy. In today's episode, I'm delighted to introduce you to Manuj Aggarwal to discuss the opportunity of combining AI with behavioral science. Ready? Let's get started.
You are listening to the Brainy Business Podcast, where we dig into the psychology of why people buy and help you incorporate behavioral economics into your business, making it more brain-friendly. Now here's your host, Melina Palmer.
Hello, everyone. My name is Melina Palmer, and I want to welcome you to the Brainy Business Podcast. As a widely recognized lover of questions, I get asked a lot of things on all sorts of topics. One that comes up often is this idea about machine learning, AI, big data, data analytics, and other areas, and how they combine with the behavioral sciences. Is there an overlap, or are they competing? How can they work together, if at all? In December of 2021, I had the honor of being part of a debate on that topic at the Insights Association's CONVERGE conference, where my team was arguing that when it comes to capturing consumer insights, AI is never going to work. This was all in the spirit of the debate, and while I didn't necessarily agree with that perspective going in, it was really interesting to consider the other side of the equation and how that can all be discussed. And yes, my teammate Barry and I did win the debate. Anyway, around the same time as I was prepping for that, I had my conversation and interview with Manuj Aggarwal. I don't want to tell too much of his story, as he will do that, but he went from making $2 a day into the boardrooms of Fortune 500 companies as a business mentor. He now has 4 patents, 2 published books, and more than 180,000 students across the globe. He's worked with multiple businesses, including Microsoft, Pearson, IBM, and many others. He even developed an AI-based system to help students avoid dropping out of degree programs that was praised and mentioned by both Barack Obama and Bill Gates. So that's awesome. He's the host of the Bootstrapping Your Dreams podcast, where I was honored to be a guest recently. And I am delighted to have him with me here on the show to talk about the value of AI and how it can overlap with behavioral science. There are, of course, links for you to connect with Manuj and see all related episodes and other content within the show notes for the episode, which are waiting for you within the app you're listening to or at thebrainybusiness.com/192. Those already on the Brainy Business list got a direct link from me in the email you receive every Friday. Not on the list yet? Simply sign up for any freebie at thebrainybusiness.com and you'll be automatically added. The freebie for this episode is the first chapter of my award-winning book, What Your Customer Wants and Can't Tell You. And if you already have the book, in which case, thank you, you'll also be automatically added to the list when you get your copy of the free PDF companion workbook. Both are housed in our free behavioral economics community called the Be Thoughtful Revolution. There's a link to join that global community in those show notes as well. All right, let's jump right in. Manuj Aggarwal, welcome to the Brainy Business Podcast.
Thank you so much. So excited to be here.
Absolutely. So we got connected through LinkedIn and I talked a tiny bit about you on the, intro here, but I always love for our guests to introduce themselves. So tell everyone a little bit about your history and the work that you do.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm one of the innovation evangelists. My name is Manuj Aggarwal, as I said. So I come from very humble beginnings. I grew up in a small town in India. And actually, my journey started as a factory worker, earning $2 a day. And somehow I landed up in the field of technology, artificial intelligence. So today I have 4 patents in artificial intelligence and machine learning. I'm considered one of the leading experts in AI globally. I have written 2 books on technology. One is on globally scalable cloud infrastructure, and another one is on enterprise-grade firewalls and cybersecurity. We teach about 190,000 students across the world on technology. And I run a technology consulting company where we provide artificial intelligence and blockchain consulting. We build mobile apps, cloud applications. And one of the unique things that I'll talk about is through my own personal experiences, I fell into meditation and learning more about human psychology and neuroscience. And then what happened was, using that knowledge about how our behavior affects our actions and combining the power of artificial intelligence is what gave me a really good insight about how we can use technology to create a very compelling solutions for the world, for businesses, for personal, even in the field of personal development, to help people unlock their full potential.
Yeah, I love that. Like you said, the humble beginnings piece, and to go from just, I think for most people, getting into a space of AI feels so like beyond what's achievable, I guess. And so I think for any background to be there is inspiring. And I love that, you just have focused on yourself. It sounds like, bettering yourself just throughout and finding what your real passion is and kind of making it happen. So I think it's such a great story. Of course, I know some of that because we've talked before today, but
thank you so much. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, I think AI is something that people get a little intimidated about, or there's just of course, too many movies with the like availability bias problem making us think like it's all going to be terrible and, problematic. So what got you interested, I guess, in AI? How did you even end up there?
What happens is we are all we are all experts in something. You are an expert in behavioral science. If I look at it from the outside, it's scary. Like, I have no idea how you do what you do. But when we follow our passion, there is never the top level that we have reached and we say to us, okay, now we know everything that is to know in the universe about this topic. Because we are following our passion, we are always trying to improve ourselves. So we are always trying to find the next frontier that we can cross. Within technology, new technology moves at a very rapid pace, right? So as new technologies come in, the projects that we are working on, forward-thinking companies, they want to apply these technologies in their business. So naturally, I follow the cutting-edge technology. So when artificial intelligence came on the scene, we started applying it. When blockchain came on the scene, we started applying it. Cloud computing, everything that sort of happens naturally, you start getting into that if you are so inclined. Now, some people, they just want to stick to what they know best, and that is a great way to flourish as well. But for me, it's always been like, okay, how much more trouble can I get into? And let's see what else we can break. So, which leads to all these different ways of growing.
Yeah. Where you mentioned blockchain, I think it reminded me of this kind of funny thing that back my husband and I, before we got married, we were in a innovation group and we were attending this where they'd spend we'd have a week on and then 6 months off and then come in in person for a week, working on innovation projects and stuff. And so they bring in these speakers, and actually in one of these events is where they brought in the people from Duke University Center for Advanced Hindsight. And that's how I got into behavioral economics. But in one of these, they had someone who was talking about blockchain. This was years ago. And so it's like a group of people who work in financial institutions who have done a lot to get to this space, very intelligent within the group. And someone spent an hour doing a lecture and talking about what blockchain was and how it works. And then someone in the group, when it was done, they're like, "Oh, are there any questions?" And, someone raised their hand and said, "Yeah, I just have one question. What is blockchain?"
Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. No, I can relate to it. It's sometimes as engineers, we get into a lot of nitty-gritty and we fail to realize that people just want very simple explanations, right?
Yeah. Which is that's my bread and butter, right? Trying to make it so things are simple. So do you have a simple explanation of blockchain and its benefits?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, basically, blockchain is a technology. See, what has happened throughout our history, we want to transact with each other, but since our society is so complex, we are not able to trust each other. Meaning, if I say to you, Melina, I will sell you this gadget for $100, you cannot be sure that if you give me $100, you will be delivered the right product and it'll be the right quality and whatnot. So this trust has created things like banks, escrows, notary public, where we need to trust a third party to say, okay, we are going to transact with each other, but we cannot trust each other. So hold on to this money. And when the transaction is complete, you can pay the other party, right? Now, blockchain, what it does is it can decentralize that trust. It can negotiate that trust between us as a technology. We don't need the bank. We don't need any third party. We can just say, okay, I'm going to put our promise on a blockchain. And when this promise is fulfilled, the technology is going to complete that transaction. So now you see how the world can be changed with this technology, where all that trust can be sort of delegated to a technology. Things like land registration, degree programs, certifications, even transactions like currency transactions, and that was the first implementation of a blockchain, which is why cryptocurrencies have become so popular. But as an underlying technology, blockchain is basically just restoring that trust between people and letting us do whatever we want to do without worrying about getting the short end of the deal.
Yeah. And so I would love if you can talk a little bit. I know you do tons of different types of projects, there are lots of business people that are listening from all areas. So if you want to share maybe an example of a favorite project or one that's really relatable.
Yeah. So I'll talk about two projects so that people get a gist of how we can deploy these. So first one is about blockchain. This was a project that we did with IBM in the mining industry. So when we say mining, not crypto mining, it's gold and silver and copper mining. And in these mining industries, mining has been around for centuries, but the business, the way that they do business has not changed in a long time. Everything is manual, everything is paper-based, and each shipment of, say, gold ore or copper ore is shipped in hundreds of trucks, and each truckload is worth $10 million, or it's a lot of valuable product. And the way that mining works is that you have a remote mine in Mexico somewhere. Then the ore needs to go to a shipping dock where the ship will take it to the smelters. The smelters will take the raw material out, and then it'll go to the refiners. Refiners will send it to China somewhere. So it's a lot of handover before the actual ore that we dig out of the ground becomes an article that you can buy. And throughout this supply chain, there's a lot of theft. There's a lot of loss. And since it's all paper-based, nothing can be done about it. Nobody can trace it back. So when we worked on this, we put everything on blockchain so that every movement, every transaction, every step of the way can be traced back to a particular locality, particular geography, particular person. And that way, you can save tons and tons of money. And you can be sure that the quality of the material is maintained and all that stuff. So this is one of the typical use cases of blockchain. Another one is, where we applied behavioral science and artificial intelligence. One of the main problems higher educational universities face is students drop out of their degree programs after first year, second year, because they find that whatever they are studying is of no interest to them. And they enrolled based on the recommendations of friends and family or career counselors. And this results in a loss of about $460 billion for US economy. So what we did was we created a system almost like a Netflix of courses, where Netflix recommends us shows based on our interest, but we recommend courses to students based on their historical data, their SAT scores and such. And so the result was that people took more courses to complete their degree programs, the dropout rates declined. And this program was so successful that President Obama mentioned it in his speech, and Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation supported the project. But the idea here is that if you really understand people and what their interests are, what really drives them, and then you align your offering based on that, things work out better for both the provider and as well as the customer who's getting the offer, right?
Yeah. And so with that, I think it's such an important point, of course, which is why you're here, right? The behavioral side of stuff and how that combines with technology. And even taking technology out, we don't often understand the way people really make decisions. And so it's hard to communicate one-on-one. But then we're talking about this mass scalability, and you're talking about so many people and understanding those behaviors. So what was that process like, I guess, in understanding, obviously you have, some herding in there. There's the social proof maybe of, people like you like this. That's kind of the Amazon approach within courses to be able to recommend them to people. But what other concepts and how did you filter that in to build it into the machine learning?
Great question. Great question. Yeah. I mean, see, as you said, even in the blockchain example, when the person, lectured for 1 hour and couldn't get the point across, it's about understanding what people are thinking and what is the reference point they have in their mind to get that concept. So it's very difficult to do that one-on-one. But if we need to do that across thousands or millions of people, it's almost impossible for a human mind to comprehend that complexity. And that is exactly the point of artificial intelligence, where it picks up all this information and then through various algorithms, it can figure out what are the patterns that are working. So in this case, what we always need to do is find out what is the objective and work backwards. So the objective in this case was, let's make sure that people do not drop out of their degree programs. The step previous to that is obviously, hey, they will not drop out if they are interested in that subject, right? So how do we find out what are they interested in? Now it becomes more of a technical problem where we say, okay, let's see, let's take example of 10,000 students, and let's see who scored at the top of their university class. Obviously, they are interested in that topic. And now trace back their steps. Let's see what they did in their school. What did they do in their debate performances? What did they do in all these extracurricular activities, which could tell us, oh, this person will be more interested in physics, so let's give them physics courses. This person will be more interested in literature. Let's give them literature courses, and so on and so forth. So now you can see we can trace back all these patterns. And now once the pattern has been established, we can do a forward-looking implementation and say, okay, a person with similar behavior, similar interest level as you, they did really, really well when they went into literature. So given your history, objectively, we can say, not based on my opinion, not based on any bias, but objectively looking at your profile, I can say with 90% surety, if you go into literature, you'll do very well. So that's the way we can take all these steps and apply a solution which really helps people in the real world. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And so with it, so it's recommending just specific courses they should take, or what their major should be in, or both?
Both. And these solutions are iterative as well, because once we apply this solution, we can start to learn even more, because now we can monitor the system in real time and say, okay, we picked up some patterns from historical data, but let's see how these patterns are working in the real time. Because as we have seen, the environment changes. Like now, a lot of courses are being offered virtually. So something like chemistry that was of interest to people when they were doing some experiments in the lab may not be as interesting in a virtual environment. So when we monitor this data and enhance our models in real time, they get even more accurate.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm going to be linking to, I have an episode on the podcast that's called What Problem Are You Solving?, which is all about this. Most people don't think enough about the problem. And so it's hard to put in the behaviors. And of course, working with AI, it'll work probably, right? If you build it, but it doesn't mean it's going to solve the problem if you're solving the wrong problem. So with that, I guess, what sort of a process do you go through in figuring out the real problem? Because as with most people I talk to, it's not that you need the client to know exactly what they're trying to do and what they want the AI to do for them, right? They just have sort of this vague idea of, this is sort of the issue we're having. What do we do now, right? And then you help with that. So what does that process look like when you're thinking about those behaviors and then how the AI can support that?
Sure. Yeah. Another great question. See, most people, what happens is when we talk to business owners or anybody, we are too close to the problem generally. So when we are trying to solve a problem, our minds sort of get clouded, and we see is that problem. And when somebody from the outside comes in, what we start with is, what are the results are you looking for? Forget about the problem that you think exists, but tell me the results that you're looking for. And then we say, okay, what is the best path and the shortest path to get that result? Because in most cases, what we found is that problem that the business owner thinks it exists, it's not even the problem that they need to be tackling, right? In order to get the results, and even in your book, you mention a lot of these frameworks. If you want to increase the sales, it may not be even the problem to get new customers. It may be, how do I service my existing customers to increase my revenue? And so the problem itself is non-existent, and the businesses are putting their efforts and money and resources towards getting new customers, whereas the existing customers are not happy. So it's not going to solve the overall goal of increasing revenue. But if you really look at all these points, so you work backwards, basically. First, figure out the result that you're looking for, and then work backwards on what is the root cause. Now, finding that root cause is not as easy as just, we spent 5 minutes talking about it. It comes with a lot of experience. It comes with a lot of diverse experience. So you see how patterns are working in different industries, in different economies, different countries. And then again, nobody can be sure that this is the root cause. So what we do is we come up with hypotheses. So we say, okay, there are 5 hypotheses we can think of, which is the root cause of the problem. Now let's collect some data to validate this hypothesis and see which ones stand the test of real objective data. And then through that process, we can say, okay, 2 of them don't make sense. Let's throw them away. Let's continue to work on the 3 hypotheses. And so it's a lot of experimentation, a lot of sort of, fact finding, a lot of digging, a lot of discussions. And ultimately, it's through some iterations, we can really zero in on what the exact problem is and go from there.
Yeah. So with the process, and figuring out the problem, I think that I'm really interested in this scalability question. And I know, like you said, you have a book on it. With the timing of the interviews is weird. So I'm talking to you today. It's a Friday, just, hey world, like behind the scenes, right? It's November. I think these episodes are going to be coming out in like late January, early February. But I'm talking to you today, and I'm talking to John List about his new book on Monday, and it's about making good ideas great and how great ideas can scale on the voltage effect. And so I think these are going to be can come kind of at the same time. So talk a little bit about scalability in general. I mean, how did you get into that thought process, knowing, of course, AI is sort of not quite synonymous, but, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, see, scalability this goes back to my early days in the factory, because in a factory, you have to do everything at scale. There is no factory that can survive by building just 10 widgets a month. So I always looked at systems which can scale. And I try to get into industries which are solving scalable problems, meaning healthcare, education. These are the problems where everybody needs them, no matter what is going on around the world, right? So when you get into these industries, you see that there are so many common problems that people are having. And then if you look for the biggest domino, which domino will address millions of people's problems in one shot, and you start to work on those kind of problems. When you find the solution, now the point is how to scale it. And again, it happens gradually. You cannot think that, you can build a Microsoft or Amazon in the first year. You have to really iterate over things and continue to learn from it. So the previous example I gave you was when we implemented the algorithms, we need to continue to monitor them and gain even more insights, because those insights can actually be fed back into the system in a loop back fashion to keep improving the system. So the more impact we can make on people, the more happiness we can increase, the more results we can show them, the more people we can drive towards their intended goals. Then what happens is it's a snowball effect where one person tells the other person, they tell the other person, and the demand continues to grow. And on the technology side, there are systems like cloud computing. There are systems, without getting too esoteric, you can start to grow your system in accordance with the demand. And there are wonderful technologies, open source technologies available today, where you don't have to invest millions of dollars to continue to grow your business on the system side, on the technology side. Whereas in year 2000, you would have had to buy millions of dollars of worth of equipment just to start your company, even if you have no customer, right? But today, you can rent a server for $10 a month and continue to incrementally grow your system as your revenue grows. So there has never been a great time than this to create a scalable, globally scalable company or a solution.
Yeah, absolutely. While you were talking, I started thinking about the network effect and how, so Facebook didn't start as I guess it's not even Facebook anymore, right? But so when Facebook started being just for students at Harvard, and then it's just for other universities, and then it expands and expands. Whereas if it had tried to be, a solution for everyone around the entire world, no matter their interest, to connect, no way it would have made its way off the ground. So do you factor in stuff like the network effect in the AI when you're looking at adoption, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, at the fundamental level, when we break open AI, it is actually a network of networks. So it actually looks at all this data in a way that is a multi-dimensional network within the algorithms. And those networks can be very non-human data points, like tell me the temperature levels of this city. Or it can be very human focused and say, okay, give me what people bought, or how did they behave, what kind of colors they like, what kind of music they like. So all these data points can be combined into one network or multiple networks. And out of that, we can apply them on network of people. And everything in this universe is a network. And business is all about people. When we connect people into a network, your customers, our employees, our partners, our vendors. So definitely the network effect has to be taken into account to build a scalable solution.
And so with that, like you're talking about bringing in maybe seemingly random or unimportant pieces of data, right? But there's often these kind of hidden things that we don't realize are an influence. So is it just more is better and you bring in everything and then let the system determine what is important, or is there some sort of curation process in that?
There is definitely a curation process there. There is a funny joke in the data science community that 80% of the job is data cleaning and 20% is actually analyzing, because there's so much garbage data out there. And there are, as you rightly pointed out, there could be, we could be spending months and months looking at the wrong things. And we can say, okay, this is the effect and this is the cause. Whereas, the cause and effect have nothing to do with each other in the real world. Because we were looking at the wrong data. So definitely, you have to fine tune it. You have to clean data. And once again, going back to the iteration process, you continuously have to do many, many, many experiments to fine tune and say, okay, these are the 3 important things which really affect the end result. So we could start with 100 different variables. We could say, the temperature of the city, the color, blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, after doing all these experiments, we found out the age of the consumer is the most important factor in this result, right? Or the age and the education, these are the 2 factors. So this comes with a lot of experimentation and experience and iteration. There is no single sort of rule which I can say, okay, this is the way to go. Everybody has their own process, but that is sort of the way that all impactful solutions are built.
Right. Yeah. Context. I say it all the time, not everything is generalizable. And actually, I would argue most everything is not.
Exactly.
You don't get to say like, oh, this worked, for this group in India in a factory, so it's going to work for me as a doctor in Texas, right? I mean, it's not gonna translate that way, which is why it's so important to test and to put things together. So how would a business decide this is something we need AI for? How do we even get to that point? What does that look like?
See, there are two things here. One is that you don't have to really become an AI expert to be able to apply it. So what do I mean by that? AI is around us already. It is in our lives already. Alexa is there, Siri is there. When we search Google, it's all AI. Facebook, we log into Facebook, it's all AI. It's looking at what our interests are and then showing us that. Now, as business owners, we can say, okay, I don't need to know what AI is doing, but how can I leverage these products? So Alexa, how can I put my product on Alexa and say, hey, if somebody says, Alexa, buy this, how can I make it easier for them? How can I give them instructions on how to use my product? How can I give them value-added services where I can upsell them on certain things or solve their problems or do customer support through AI, chatbots, and all that stuff. So it's about thinking, okay, what are the things that AI provides? So a good example could be, when I use my car to go from one point to another, I have no idea how the engine works. I have no idea how the spark plugs work or how the fuel is injected or whatever. But I just know, okay, if I want to go from point A to point B, I just need a car, right? Working car. Same thing can be done by the business owners and say, okay, if I need to support my customers, what are some of the things that AI can do that can be applied quickly, right? And that's where, people like us can help them really understand, okay, these are the technologies that already exist, which can make immediate impact in your business. The next level is going a little bit deeper now, where things have not been made that easy, but it's about finding the repeated patterns. Because AI, all it is finding repeated patterns in the world. So if you say that, hey, I know I see these patterns of things where I'm losing money, or I'm not able to make enough money, or I'm losing time, things are breaking down, but it is happening again and again and again. So can we apply AI to automate something here or eliminate some bottlenecks here? So as a business owner or an individual, you need to look for repeated patterns in real life. And that's where AI can be really, really helpful to, optimize the business.
So I would guess that for most people, from what I've seen also is they try to run tests and things. And like you said, for people who own a business, so we'll go to the kind of entrepreneur side, because there are a lot of them that listen to the show as well. I love the tip of, there are things that you can be doing. You want to be looking for stuff to automate. Tracking to know what the problem is where I think the problem is going to start before we even get started. So do you have tips for a system that can be used to help kind of evaluate where you might have a problem, where you're losing time or money or anything like that?
So one simple trick is look at some repeated patterns where something happens consecutively 3 times. Let's say I was not able to get this published or something yesterday or day before, and this happened 3 times. Oh, this is happening so frequently. There must be an automated solution for something like this, right? So when you start to see these patterns repeatedly, and as business owners, as entrepreneurs, it becomes our baby. So, those of us who are our parents, we can see the patterns when we raise a baby. Like, oh, if I give this baby this kind of food, this is what happens. So once you start to see these patterns, you can start to take mental notes of them, and then when you sit down with an expert like myself, a technology expert, you can describe these patterns and say, okay, this is what I noticed happened. So it's like when you go to the doctor as well, you get this diagnosis. This is what happened before I got this effect. So can we just discuss it and how we can sort of address that problem? And then the expert can diagnose the problem and come up with some solutions that we can try. And again, no guarantee that these solutions will work, but you implement them, you notice the behavior change, then again, you iterate, then you improve upon the solution, then that's how you can implement it.
Yeah. I feel like that is a really great segue to get into some of the mindfulness piece, right? So whether your journey with meditation kind of got into just from observing and taking notes of things, and then you have that sort of Zen experience. But do you want to talk about that sort of aspect at all?
Yeah, absolutely. Mindfulness and meditation helped me really address that problem that we talked earlier. Because me being an engineer, I used to talk exactly like that. In esoteric terms, if you had asked me about blockchain, I would have started talking to you about encryption levels, 256 SHA, which will have made no sense whatsoever, right?
Yeah.
But with meditation, so what happens is, we have our own subconscious mind and we have our cognitive mind. And one example I give is, the stickers. Kids have these stickers, and they have the sticky side, but to protect that sticky side, you have this smooth layer that is stuck to it, right? Our minds are similar to that, where we have the subconscious mind and we have the cognitive mind. Most of the decisions are made by our subconscious mind. In fact, 95% of them are made by subconscious mind. But we have been made to think that human beings are rational beings, and we think rationally, which is totally false.
Right.
And in this fallacy, we tend to think that whatever we are thinking is exactly the way that other people are thinking. And with meditation, what happens is this layer, these two layers start to separate, meaning the peel of that sticker starts to come off, right? And now with your cognitive mind, you can observe your subconscious mind, right? And you can say, hey, look at me, I'm thinking this thought right now as an objective, observer.
Mm-hmm.
And now you can say, see, I'm talking about this. I'm talking about encryption levels, and Melinda is not able to get it. So there is some disconnect here. Now, so you can see yourself having this conversation as an objective observer, as a third party. And that is the magic of meditation, because now it allows you to connect with other human beings at a much more meaningful level, in such a way that you can speak their language, you can connect with them better, and generally improve the quality of your own thinking of your own life as well.
Right. And so what I think, so for me, there are different types of meditation where we say, and like I would have those sorts of moments when I would go out for a run, so
exactly.
And it's not just the like have to sit and, be
absolutely
silent or whatever, but going for a run, and then I would see, a bus would go by, and, working in marketing space at the time, and you go, I wonder why they did that way. Were they thinking they were going to do that? How might I do something like that? As I'm out on the run, and have the ability to have reflection and thoughtfulness where you're not doing something else, like in the moment. Yeah. Do you have any other tips for people that don't like the idea of the association we have in the brain of you hear meditation and you think something that most people might not find appealing. So
absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're so correct in pointing that out. Like, it's really about unplugging. It's really about getting into something that you would do any day of the week, whether you are getting paid for it, whether there is any benefit to it. It's just for the sake of having fun. When you get into that, your mind is totally disconnected from the world. And now, as you said, use the word reflect. It can reflect upon itself. It can start to talk to itself. And that is the whole magic. The only two components that I will add to that practice, and just to cover that thought, some people meditate while motorcycling, that's their Zen moment. Some people like to go on long drives. So it doesn't that you need to become a Buddhist monk to sit down for hours to meditate. It's just reflection, right? And then the only two things which I add to that is gratitude and forgiveness, right? So because these are the fundamental emotions that really center you, because when you are grateful, you are appreciating all that you have in life, regardless. And that raises your frequency, and that clears your thought process to be able to, listen to your intuition. And then forgiveness is another thing where again, when we carry all these grudges and all that stuff, it clouds our ability to, think clearly and talk to ourselves. So once you add these two components, then any kind of activity that really unplugs you naturally is great.
Right. And I think too, it's that even just taking a little bit of time to look a little bit deeper at something that has always been there. So if you like to sit out on your back deck or whatever, and then you are looking at a tree, but instead of just sort of having the tree be there, then you get to see, like, wow, there's a lot of interesting shapes to the leaves, and noticing the light in them and what birds are in there. Just, taking that time to have some space for your brain is so important. So thank you. And I actually have an episode of the podcast that is in this, how to filter for gratitude and the benefits of it. So I will definitely be linking to that in the show notes. I love just taking the time to think about our brains, think about thinking, being thoughtful, as I always say, to end the show and everything. So thank you for sharing that side and how important that is. And, did you find, I think just to bring that full circle, right? So I know for me, letting go of some stuff in the past and just getting into this happier space has made it to where so many amazing things come my way, right? So would you say, did you notice any shift in your business or other areas when you focused on meditation?
Absolutely. That is the key. That is the key first step to attaining whatever people are looking for. In fact, we built AI-based systems to help unlock people's potential, because as humans, we always strive to go after money, success, fame, yet our minds are full of, hey, she said this to me, this is what's going on. The script needs to be flipped around. First, we need to feel fulfilled and happy and clear of all these negative emotions, which then leads to amazing opportunities. When I say amazing, as you just pointed out, sometimes we don't even know what kind of limits we are putting on ourselves. And when we let go of everything and let things just happen, it can lead to amazing opportunities, which are unthinkable. Like, you could not even imagine that this was possible. So definitely that is the key to everything.
Right. Well, and I think that there is a real tie into connections then with people, like we were saying. So there are a few components. There's the mindfulness, your own brain, getting your own stuff in line, right? Decluttering, getting that in line, knowing what you're passionate about, being able to follow, like you said, with some of that AI that you built in for schools, and, thinking about what you're going to enjoy. And then also to make it so that those things can find you. So apologies for people that feel this is getting woo-woo or whatnot, but like this, it's my show. That's how I feel about it, right? So you bring that in, and then as you give out into the world in connections and conversations, like I fully know that because with the podcast early on, I started sharing and saying things like, so-and-so gave a 5-star review. Thank you so much. I've tagged to them on Instagram in the show notes, so people go follow them or whatnot, right? And by having a conversation like that on the air with someone from Texas A&M University at the Human Behavior Lab who was listening, and I teach there now, and it's because of this, sharing and having good conversations. And so putting the social back in social media is really important, and where like you and I had a conversation. But that doesn't mean that you can't also incorporate some AI to help you to be social out there, right? Do you have any tips for that?
Yeah. As you rightly pointed out, it's all about having conversations. It's all about building connections. It's all about relationships, right? And language, if you read the history of language, is one of the greatest powers that humans have, but it's also the greatest, it's a double-edged sword, because language can also divide us, right? And so unfortunately on social media, people are using language to divide us, but artificial intelligence, and this is another technology that we have built to use the right language, to tell the right stories, to create an atmosphere where people feel understood, through artificial intelligence, create these connections and relationships at scale. Because doing that one-on-one is not the easy job for anybody, even if they are very good at communication, because we only have 24 hours in a day. So we can only devote so many Zoom conversations to build like 2 connections a day. But if we automate things, if we use artificial intelligence to create genuine human connections, we can scale it to thousands and millions. So that's exactly the missing piece, where people think marketing is all about, yelling at the top of your lung, hey, buy my product. It's more like, this is what I have to offer. One thing that I always say is nobody cares how much you know until they know how much you care. So through artificial intelligence, you can tell people how much you care and then attract them to come to you.
Yeah, love it. Well, is there anything else as we go to wrap up that I should have asked or that you wish you would have had an opportunity to talk about before we close out?
No, this has been such an entertaining conversation. Thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to more conversations, you being on my podcast as well.
Yes, me as well. And so for everyone who is now so excited to connect with you, to learn more, what are their best routes to do so?
Yeah, the best one is find me on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, but check out my podcast as well. As I said earlier, Melina is going to be on that, Bootstrapping Your Dreams, or they can go to my personal website, manujaggarwal.com, and contact me there.
Perfect. Well, we'll have links for all of that, of course, in the show notes, so everyone can reach out, learn more, and have some of those genuine connections that we've been talking about today. So
thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for joining me. Thank you again to Manuj Aggarwal for joining me on the show today. What got your brain buzzing in today's conversation? One of my favorite tidbits that I wrote down from our conversation was that you need to forget about the problem you think exists and instead ask, what are the results you're looking for? Reframing the problem and thinking about things differently, taking a step back, is so important as you look to build any program or work on any project, not just those involving AI. What if you forgot about what you thought the problem was and looked instead at the optimal place you want to end up? Why are you doing this? Why does it matter? Who cares about it? Is it worth the investment? Remember back to my conversation with John List from a couple weeks ago in episode 190, where he talked about his new book, The Voltage Effect, and making great ideas that scale. Not everything can or should scale, but for ideas that are intended to, one of the things they need to do is work outside of their petri dish. The best thing you can do is test your own theories in a way that you're trying to break them. If you use confirmation bias kind of against you instead of for you, if you see the string hanging out of the metaphorical sweater, don't tuck it away and try to hide it. Pull at it. You want to try to unravel that sweater before it unravels you. That episode with John List is my top recommended next episode, as noted for you in the show notes. And if you've already heard that one, I have a dozen or so others linked that are curated for you based on today's conversation with Manuj, including those on the network effect and other interviews I've had in the areas of AI and machine learning, as well as several biases and how to think about testing and working on the right problem. It's all waiting for you in the show notes for the episode, which again are in the app you're listening to or at thebrainybusiness.com/192. If you liked what you heard today or have any specific tidbits that stood out to you, maybe Manuj's thoughts on meditation and mindfulness, or about building social connections on LinkedIn with AI or anything else, let us know on social media. You can find Manuj as at Manuj Agro, as part of Aggarwal. It's MANUJAGRO on Twitter. And I'm the Brainy Biz, B-I-Z. We would love to have a conversation with you there. Or you can always find us both on LinkedIn as well. Those handles are, of course, linked for you in those show notes, so you can conveniently just go click and have a conversation tagging us. And you're going to find those again at thebrainybusiness.com/192. And if you enjoy the experience I've provided here for you, will you share about it? That could mean leaving a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or wherever else you listen, sharing this episode or any other with a friend who you think would find value in the insights, or even hitting that subscribe button if you haven't already. Thank you so much in advance. I appreciate it, and you. Thank you again to Manuj Aggarwal for joining me on the show today to discuss the overlap of AI and behavioral economics. It was a delight to chat with and learn from you. Join me next week for another Brainy episode of the Brainy Business Podcast. It's going to be a lot of fun. You won't want to miss it. Until then, thanks again for listening and learning with me. And remember to be thoughtful.
Thank you for listening to the Brainy Business Podcast. Molina offers virtual strategy sessions, workshops, and other services to help businesses be more brain-friendly. For more free resources, visit thebrainybusiness.com.